this clip is particularly hilarious because you see these numbskulls at Fox News trying to continue to justify their argument about defund police, about how, oh my God, we defunded it as a catastrophe and all this stuff, even though they secretly know that the police have not been defunded. So they're like, you'll see. They're trying to justify it, but it's like they have to keep stretching. The mental gymnastics just gets bigger and bigger to try and justify this. But okay, so this is Fox News. And they're also talking about something that happened with a cop, which isn't important. So if you hear them say like what that cop did or whatever, just it doesn't matter.
Well, as for the small town, how small is it?
So what he's talking about is, sorry, I forgot to give you the last piece of prepping you for this. But when he says that small town, there's a small town in Minnesota where all the police just quit just the other day. But it is a truly small town. It has 1,200 people. It had something like 5 full-time police. Like, so this is like a Walmart in another town. This is a nothing town. I don't mean the people there aren't lovely, but there's not, I guarantee you, in a 1,200 person town in Minnesota, in rural Minnesota, where I looked it up on Google Maps, it's like 5 blocks. I guarantee you that these 5 cops were not stopping a lot of crime. There's not like a real criminal enterprise going on in a 1,200 person town that's 5 blocks long with 5 cops. I guarantee you. Whereas Fox News has to be like, oh, these cops are quitting. They found like one town, and the cops quit because, I'll get more into this. The cops quit because they weren't being paid enough, which had nothing to do with defunding the police. Nothing to do with it. But all right, so I had to give that prep.
Good sometimes goes bad. In this case, it went well. As for the small town, how small is it? I mean, they had
the 6-person force.
Yes.
Yeah. 1,200 people in the town.
Yeah, so I mean,
there's 1,200 people in the town. Did you hear her say there's a 6-person police force? And I think some of them are not full-time. But whatever, 6 cops. So this thing that they're trying to make out, look at it. It says defund's dream across the bottom of the Fox News screen. This thing that they're trying to make out to be a big defund the cops moment was 6 fucking police officers. This is, I live in Baltimore. There's 6 police officers per block. Like, this is just, they're trying to make this a story where there's no story. And even they have to admit, like, oh, this is a pretty small town, huh?
I mean, maybe this is a great experiment to go private. You know, private always does public better.
Ha, 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 ha. Private always does public better. No, it fucking doesn't. What private does better is collect profit no matter what for the rich. And in the cases where, quote, private does public better, if you're talking about things like schooling, the reason the public schools are failing is because the government won't put money into them to begin with. So if you well funded the public schools, they'd be great. They'd be wonderful. Private doesn't do public better. Private exploits people better. But this is the garbage you get from Fox News, right? And from most right-wingers is this type of shit. They point to something that they defunded. I don't mean just, I do mean right-wingers because Democrats are right-wingers. So when I say right-wingers, it's often Democrats as well in the government. And so they defund it, and then they point to it and say, it's not working. The thing we cut all the funding for isn't working. What do we do now? Well, I guess we have to get, Amazon to teach the kids. Amazon and Apple and Elon Musk will teach the kids. So that's what they do. They defund it. They say it's collapsing. And then they go, oh, well, the only answer is to privatize it. And so here he is saying, maybe there's a great chance to go private. You mean to move to 5 cops, 5 private cops? You're going to have 5 mercenary cops in this town of 1,200 people. You know what those cops were doing in that fucking town? They were standing there. There's not... You understand what goes on in small town America with that's 5 blocks. Now, I understand there are small towns that have crime, but I would love to know the crime stats for this 1,200 person, 5-block long town. Fox News will keep telling you about defund the police and, oh, look, they've been defunded and crime has gone up and the defunding and, oh, my God, the defunding and, oh, it's so much defunding. There's been zero defunding, like almost zero. There's been some towns where there was some defunding back in like 2021, and then they immediately went the other direction. Anyway, I'll actually show you something from PolitiFact, which normally I don't show you PolitiFact because PolitiFact is a liberal bullshit outlet. A liberal propaganda outlet. However, I looked it up in various sources. What they're saying about this one is true. So this is Jim Jordan, congressman, Republican congressman, says, I got a list of 20 jurisdictions that defunded the police to the tune of over $1 billion. Boom! What a gotcha, Jim Jordan says. Oh, got it. Oh, wow. 20 jurisdictions, $1 billion total. Bam! So he said this in January 2023. So he said it this year. And PolitiFact has that as mostly false because it is nearly 100% false. Although here's the thing, they're actually wrong because all he said was, I have a list. So if he made up a false list of jurisdictions, then it's true. He's like, I have this list. Did you write that list? Yes. Is it true? No, it's absolutely not true, but I have a list. But anyway, and on his list, it says things like New York City, which has undone all of their defunding, which they had a little bit of defunding, but most of it didn't even get through the government there. And then what was left was like, initially they said $1 billion, but what was left was like $300 million defunding. But then of that, like half of it, they just repositioned cops from schools over to streets. They took it from school budgets or whatever. So really it was half of what they said it was. And now they've undone that. So New York City was one of the biggest ones, and it's been essentially completely undone. And then here's Austin, Texas, which was another one that had some defunding. But so here's the data to 2022. So they did have some defunding in 2020 to 2022. There was some defunding, and then they completely undid it. And now they have a larger police budget in Austin, Texas than they've ever had in the history of Austin, Texas. So the idea that Republicans are still touting this talking point of like, it's defunded and they defunded the things and the cops don't have any of the monies is bullshit. It's utter bullshit. In the case of that small town in Minnesota, why did those 5-6 cops quit? Because they said they weren't getting paid enough. So, and it was not because their budget of this town had been decreased. It was just that people across America in most jobs are not getting paid enough. And workers now have the ability, the strength to stand up and say, we are not getting paid enough. And that's not just cops. That's most jobs are now doing that, are now standing up, and people are saying we're not getting paid enough. So this is just loads and loads of horseshit. Then on top of that, and this is actually mentioned in the Fox News clip, one of them, maybe she claims to be a Democrat, but one of them who kind of every once in a while pretends to give the other side of the talking points. She said, well, defund the police is not the stated stance of the Democratic Party. Biden has funded police more than even Trump did. And she's saying it like, what a good thing. When in fact, I'm saying, oh, these are all sociopaths. And Biden has funded police, the fascist police forces across this country, even more than Trump did. Like, think of that. So again, this defund the police thing is not happening. There are some select instances where they defunded a little bit for like a year and then undid it. The only one that maybe continues is Minneapolis. But then, of course, all the right wing will point to any place that did decrease funding a little bit and say, then crime went up and crime went crazy. Well, there's a lot of reasons crime is going up. And first of all, in a lot of places, it's not going up. So there's that too. They claim it's going up across the country. That's not true. In many places, it's gone down. In many places, violent crime has gone down. There are some areas where crime has gone up, but in those areas, it's mainly, first of all, like I said, there's been almost no defunding of police across the country. So you can't point to that as the reason that crime's gone up. But then on top of that, the real reason is due to all the shitstorm that happened through the pandemic, where you had people forced to stay home. They couldn't make a living. They couldn't pay their rent. Now you have stopped the eviction freeze. So people getting kicked out of their homes. People getting kicked off Medicare, which is a major story. People losing their health care. It's just like people's lives are destroyed at every angle. And you know what people do when their lives are destroyed? They try and find ways to survive. And they also try to find ways to self-medicate. So you end up with a lot more drug use. The overdoses are through the roof. Drug use can lead to bad decisions. I'm for decriminalization of drugs, but I also still admit that in some cases, drug use can lead to some bad decisions. So there's a million reasons. And the right way was to say, it's because of defunded of the police. It's because of the thing we made up that we pretend it was everywhere when it was actually like 2 cities and they've stopped doing it. And defunding of police and actual police abolition or near police abolition could work if it also was combined with a large organizing effort of what community policing means, how it works, all these different things. And of course, you'd have to stop arresting people for dumb drug crimes. You'd have to stop the completely illegal and immoral drug war. There's a lot of steps to police abolition that have to be done in concert, that have to be done as a large process. Yes, of course, if you leave our city or any city, if you leave a city that is in the trenches, in the gutters of unfettered capitalist destruction, of inequality and unclean water and, all these problems, the education system is shit and all this stuff. And then you go, oh, also there's no police. Let's see what happens. And then, it doesn't work very well immediately. It's a lot more than that. It's a lot bigger than that. But like I said, there's been very little defunding of police across the country because Biden is Mr. Police. In fact, throughout his career in the Senate, Biden often said, throughout the 90s, early 2000s, he said any police bill, meaning anything that wants to fund them more, give them more power, give them more weapons, send them weapons of war. He's like, I want to be the face of it. Like, he has quotes to that, of that kind, of that style throughout his career, wanting to be Mr. Policing. So meanwhile, his son, of course, was heavily addicted to drugs, which shows the hypocrisy as he pushes drug laws that have doubled the prison population.